Well, hello, friends. Bronson Casa here from the Hawaii Connection. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Electoral College. It's going to be a very, very fun exercise to do. Now, this is 270towin.com. This is a great way to see how states can move back and forth. And I really like how this website kind of sets it up. But this is based off of the 2020 consensus. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come down to the blank map. And I like to start it from scratch. And the reason for that is I like to hear what other people has to say about certain things, but I also really take every little bit of information and do my own thing. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. So we're going to start off from the West Coast because I'm from the West Coast and this is the easiest way to do it. Hawaii is typically going to be a blue state. It's going to always be a blue state unless you have somebody like Ronald Reagan win in 1984. I'm going to change this to add lean. You have the states that will lean. Alaska. Alaska is historically red. That's the time of Republican Ted Stevens, even during that time. Sarah Palin's from there. California, historically blue. Oregon's going to be blue. And Washington's going to be blue. So the West Coast is all blue here. And interesting enough, most of these three states here are typically have their population centers in their cities. So the population center kind of dictates what the rest of the state does. And that's definitely true for these three states. California has Sacramento, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, and then when you get down south, LA and San Diego, and those population centers definitely justify what will be moving when it comes to politics. So in California's case, definitely Democrat. As soon as you get on the outskirts of California, you start getting a little bit more red towards the rural districts. Oregon's no exception to that. Once you get into Portland and Salem, and I think when you get down to Eugenie, it starts. Those are all blue districts, and then once you go to the outskirts to the rural areas, those districts turn red. So you see these little pockets of blue with red all over the entire state. So the population centers definitely dictate these areas. Washington State, once you get to Spokane, once you get to Vancouver, Washington, as well as Seattle and Olympia, those are all historically going to be moving blue, which makes that state blue, and the rest of the districts on the outside of those cities, red. Now, Idaho is slowly turning as a swing state. I'll give it another 4 to 6 years unless something bad happens. But this is going to turn red. There's people from Oregon that's moving into Idaho, and people from Spokane that's living out here. We have Post Falls, which is the fastest growing community. You have Coeur d'Alene that's has a lot of people from Washington State moving that way as well. Nevada, historically red, historically blue. So they're going to move towards Joe Biden. There's a lot of it's an interesting thing about Nevada is one part of it is definitely blue, like Reno, Carson City, and Las Vegas. Those are obviously those population centers that hold the majority of people, and then once you get to the outskirts, things tend to change a little bit. So Nevada is definitely a blue state. Utah, 100% red. Well, I mean, not 100%, but you know what I mean. Arizona, Arizona is going to be the tricky one. There's a lot of toss-ups because you have Mark Kelly, who is a former astronaut, and I believe his wife was Gabrielle Giffords, who was the former congresswoman from Tucson that was shot in the head. And so he's running for Senate and as a Democrat. So that might change the political atmosphere in Arizona, if you think about that. We also have McSally, who is the current Republican senator that will be going against him, and there's another lady, I forget her name, but she's also a senator from Arizona as well. That is a Democrat. So there's a lot of changes in Arizona politics. Phoenix and Tucson, those population centers definitely hold Democratic districts. As soon as you get to the outskirts, Kingman, some other places, they tend to turn red. So I'm going to lean it red for now. New Mexico, I'm just going to say it's blue. Colorado is blue. Those are historically blue states. Colorado, interestingly enough, used to be a swing state. So it's interesting to see how they've progressed. But there has been a lot of people that's been moving from California to these center of America, to the Midwest. Wyoming, that's going to be a red state. Montana, red state. And then right down this line here, this Midwest is all red. North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Now, I just want to point out on Nebraska here, there has been one other time within this since the early 2000s in presidential election history, where two states, Nebraska and Maine, have at least one vote that went to the other person. Now, just know that in the Electoral College process, 48 states says it's winner takes all. In Nebraska and Maine, that's not the case. It goes by congressional districts. So if Nebraska has 4 congressional districts that vote Republican, and the 5th congressional district says, I'm going to vote the Joe Biden, the Democrat, then they can split their vote 4-1. And I'm going to show you an example, just like that, 4-1. And you saw that change of the number up there. But based off of Nebraska's politics right now, I'm gonna keep it at 5 for Donald Trump. Minnesota, historically Democrat. I'm going to keep it Democrat. Iowa, we'll come back to Iowa. Missouri is going to go red. Now you're going to get into something called the Bible Belt. Arkansas, red. Louisiana, red. Mississippi, red. Alabama, red. Georgia, red. South Carolina, red. Tennessee, red. Kentucky, red. West Virginia, red. Now if we get over to Florida, Florida has been historically a swing state. So it's been very interesting to watch how Florida has been changing a lot. I think it's going to be leaning red for Donald Trump. Now let's head up to. I'm gonna hold off from North Carolina. Virginia has been turning blue. It's going to turn blue for Joe Biden. Now let's head over to Wisconsin. We're going to hold off from that. Michigan, we're going to hold off from that. Illinois, because of the population center of Springfield and Chicago, Illinois is going to turn blue. Indiana, Mike Pence is from there. It's going to turn hardcore red. Ohio, we're going to hold off from here. Pennsylvania, we'll hold off from there. Now we're going to go down the line here. Massachusetts, historically red. Historically blue. It's going to be going for. This is where Elizabeth Warren is from, and all the Kennedys. Rhode Island is going to turn blue. Connecticut, blue. New Jersey, blue. Delaware, which is the home state of Vice President Biden. Maryland is going to turn blue. Big Catholic town there, or state there. D.C. is going to turn blue. Now let's look at New York. That's going to turn blue. You have New York has been historically Democrat. Vermont, that's the home of Bernie Sanders. That's going to turn blue. New Hampshire is going to turn blue. And Maine is going to turn blue. So we're at 233 for the Democratic side, 220 for the Republican side. There's 85 to go. Now, based off of this prediction, if all these numbers come out correctly without the 6 states that I've selected thus far, we're on a good track. Iowa, if you look at Iowa politics, fairly interesting, but needless to say, it's gonna turn red. Wisconsin. Wisconsin's been fairly interesting to watch as far as politics go. Currently they reelected Tammy Baldwin, who's the Democratic United States Senator in the 2018 election. Republicans continue to hold the majority of seats in Congress, which is about 5 out of 8. And then Wisconsin also holds a Democratic governor. So Wisconsin will probably lean blue for now. Coronavirus is a big question mark right now, so this may change. Michigan right now, the governor of Michigan hasn't been doing too much of a good job with handling the coronavirus cases. She might be a little bit overstepping the boundary. She is a Democrat, and with that will affect the Democratic Party in the election. For now, I'm going to say it's going to lean blue. That, however, may change. Ohio, there is a lot of things that's been happening between Ohio and Iowa. Ohio and Iowa has something in common, and Pennsylvania for that matter. They have a lot of issues with the trade from earlier this year, so a lot of farmers are very, very. I'm not going to say mad because I think mad is too harsh. They're very concerned constituents regarding the Chinese tariffs. Pork, grain, corn, those types of things get shipped out because the United States is a major exporter to the world, and when Trump placed in a tariff with China, that was one of those things that a lot of farmers took a huge hit for. So we don't really know if they're going to be affected. I have reason to believe that Iowa for sure is going to turn red. Ohio might be leaning blue. I don't know. This is where it's just a huge toss-up. So I'm just going to put this right now as a possible red state. Pennsylvania currently has a Democratic governor, and he hasn't been doing too much of a good job. And so I think Pennsylvania might turn red. We're just going to put that as a question mark, but we're going to say that that's there. Now, North Carolina, before I forget, Pennsylvania and North Carolina have something in common, and that is, that is the redistricting. Now, Pennsylvania was forced to do redistricting under Supreme Court law. So you will see a lot of changes because the Republicans currently controlled Pennsylvania and North Carolina had the decisions where they can draw out these lines. Now with the Supreme Court addressing this issue, we may see a different change in the landscape when it comes to with people getting elected in those districts. So I know for sure North Carolina will be turning blue this season. Is going to lean blue. Pennsylvania is going to lean red. This is going to be a very, very, very close election. This is based off of if this was today. Things might change down the road. If there's a recession that's going to hit, you might see Pennsylvania and Ohio change over to blue. If the Democratic governors in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania don't shape up things better, you'll see these go into Trump. So right now, Joe Biden, 274 electoral delegates versus Donald Trump, 264 delegates. All right. Thanks, guys.